Hi everyone, Richard here. In a recent video of this series, part 6, I showed you these three interesting geometries that are formed in an unusual double-proof way, and all having mathematically the exact same proportions. This last one, turned upright, looks like this. In its simplest form, it's just a pentagram, circle, with the sides of the pentagram extended down until they meet vertical lines drawn at the sides of the circle, like this. A horizontal line where they meet forms the bottom. It's easy to imagine an early artist using this simple geometry for a cathedral-shaped painting. Raphael did at least 3 paintings with this same proportion and rounded top. I believe he may have done at least one more on that later. Those 3 paintings shown here chronologically are Coronation of the Virgin, circa 1502-1504, The Virgin and Child with the infant St. John the Baptist, better known as La Belle Jardinière, circa 1507-1508, and Madonna of Foligno, circa 1511-1512. And he wasn't alone. I did a quick internet search of paintings by the major artists of the Italian Renaissance and found at least 6 that appeared to have the exact same proportions: Giovanni Bellini's Baptism of Christ and Virgin in Glory with Saints, Botticelli's The Coronation of the Virgin with Saints, Filippino Leppe's Signora altarpiece, and Titian's St. Mark enthroned with saints, and Madonna in Glory with saints in a donor. And I expect there are more. It seems quite likely that most, if not all, of these artists use this geometry for the shape and proportion of these paintings. If they did, then I would expect some would have hints of the geometry within the composition of the works. So do they? Starting with the Raphaels, his Coronation of the Virgin gives few hints of the geometry. The figures in the clouds do nearly rest on the horizontal side of the inverted pentagram, but there's little else that immediately stands out. The La Belle Jardinière, however, does seem to fit the geometry in a very real way. Mary's forehead and the side of the Christ child line up with the extended side of the pentagram. Mary's right arm and shoulder parallel that line as well. Mary's left arm and shoulder, along with the back of her head, line up nicely with the right side of the pentagram, and her head is beautifully centered. I also find it interesting the way the bodies of the Christ child and St. John align with the sides of the pentagrams. The most interesting geometric alignment for Raphael's Madonna of Foligno is how the Madonna fits the central triangle of the pentagram like this, especially how she almost rests on the bottom side of that triangle. I've not thoroughly investigated most of the other paintings I mentioned, but Titian's St. Mark enthroned with saints has the most striking geometric alignment in the way the enthroned St. Mark fits that same central triangle of the pentagram like this. And in Titian's Madonna in Glory with saints in a donor, it's interesting how the figures of St. Elvise in his bishop's regalia and the donor form a dark block that thrusts up into the painting from the lower right, paralleling the sides of the pentagrams, with Elvise's head awkwardly thrown back so that his face aligns with the bottom side of the pentagon, and his right arm and hand, lifted and pointing skyward, parallels the sides of a pentagram. Interesting as well is the way the figures of Mary, the Christ child, and an angel fit snugly in an area the shape of which can be formed from these sides of the pentagrams. This is pure speculation, but might have Titian first drawn these figures in the geometry in this way, but then decided they sit too low in the composition, so raised them slightly. I mentioned at the beginning I think there might be a fourth Raphael that fits this geometry. This one. The Marriage of the Virgin. Or did it originally look like this? Hint, I think it did. And I can almost prove it. Find out more in my next video, Part 9, Raphael's The Marriage of the Virgin. For more information on my own work, please visit my website at rtdavis.com. And you can also find me on Instagram at Richard Thomas Davis Artist. Thanks for joining me.